We found the front view, yeah.
They don't know, they don't know.
Good evening, folks. We're about to start this special call meeting for March the 4th, 2021. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Johnson, I suppose you have the roll.
Sir.
Got two missing. I thought they was gonna be here. Maybe they'll show up here in a minute or two. Anyway, only item on the agenda. Let me open up the agenda and see what it says. Discussion and interaction regarding approval of building program update. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Open for discussion. Dr. Phillips.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. I know this is different timing for our meeting, and this month we were out. We changed our meeting this month for a week, so kind of to get aligned with the county, we wanted to do this so we wouldn't miss another month. Here, I'm gonna get organized. What the first thing I want you to do is watch. Where's Chris at? Chris, can you go ahead and play the video? On your screen, it may be a little choppy because these screens are not quite as good as the TV screens. We did just do a new video of the campus. So while I organize here, will y'all watch that? If you'll watch, we went ahead and put on there, when the drone goes over, you'll see where the middle school's at, okay? Or where the middle school will be. And you can see how much progress has been made.
Is this the high school?
That's the high school as you're going over the front door. So you can see how big the footprint is. All of that is high school. You see the courtyard back to the left, that's the gym. That's multi-purpose and CTE back to the right. And then once you leave there, you start going up the hill where that, all those excavators and stuff, where that shot rock's at. That's the path to the left is the football field is down in the hole. And to the right is where the field house will be. And you kind of start seeing the baseball field and the softball fields on past that. This is softball field. It's really been blasted to the right. Move back to the left. It's practice soccer, actually soccer, practice soccer, football practice and track. That's the main soccer field right there. Going back to the high school, this is from the back. You can kind of see how it steps down in the football. So that's where those, remember I told you to come off the light, Hendersonville is, where you're gonna have that rock. That's where the student section and probably the band be down there. And then of course, there'll be seats low to the field and then up above grade 2. All that, where all those pipes are and all that shot rock field, that's all parking. So you'll have majority of your parking for students in the day, and then anyone that comes at night will be back in the back. Be between the gym entrance and then the gym entrance and athletic entrance. Road's cut where it'll go, of course there'll be a red light there. They've really done a lot of work here since the last video. They already have footers poured at the elementary school. And with all this past last week, if we got some more weather like yesterday and today, we're going to be moving on pretty good there. That's Mr. Brown's house, you can see it. The road is road, see the road where they already got some gravel, some big rock down on it. Where those ruts are is flat. Uh-oh. Oh, that's it. Where those ruts were at, that's the flat area, that's where we're gonna leave. It's graded pretty flat anyway. We're gonna leave that so we can, in the future, have more play fields there if we need them at some point. We're gonna have minus the elementary school, you know, I think we've got 6 or 7 up there anyway. So we'll have, yeah, right there. Back to the right there where those ruts are, that's the main road that goes around that tree line. Look, I think if you would have kind of looked, but the middle school will be there to the left. Y'all see that? Yeah. Middle school will be up there on the hill to the left.
On which side of the towers?
The middle school actually will be closer, past the towers. You see where the dirt is down there?
Hmm.
That's pretty close to where they're grading for the middle school.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot closer to the high school athletic fields, look, so they can use them, you know, you don't duplicate money. You use high school field and middle school field. They'll have their own practice field for the day, you know, football and stuff, but, you know, they're close to the stadium, they're close to stuff, so middle school can kind of take advantage of using some of the high school athletic stuff. If we moved it further down toward the elementary school, it would have been getting a little crowded against the park, and then it would have just been a long way, from the high school and from athletic fields. But I thought you guys, especially talking about what we're talking about tonight, it would be good to see that, because it's made a lot of progress. Those guys out there working every day. Okay. All right, so we've got two things here. A little update about just kind of where we're at with the progress of the construction. Everything there is on schedule. You know, probably the biggest thing we've had to do versus other projects, just the market. We had to order a lot of materials, the contractor, not us, but we've been we've had to pick things out, you know, and things that weren't already picked out in spec, we had to approve their samples a lot sooner because material delay, it's just tough, especially that quantity, and it's gotta be exactly that color, you can't take an alternate. So, probably the biggest thing for us, which is a good thing from Biskin's side, they've done this enough, in big projects that, they knew that they were going to get way out in front of it. So, most of those things that we may not have even picked out for another 6 months have already been picked out and ordered and, rocking and rolling. So, maybe even with some COVID manufacturing and shipping delays, we're gonna be in good shape, and they're doing a good job. The reason this kind of came up, while we're meeting tonight, we have opportunity over the county to refinance some bonds, previous bonds. I think they're 2011, 2013, and you know, in 2011 and 2013, the interest rate that we received when we sold those bonds. It was a pretty good rate for that time, but it's nothing compared to the rate now. Municipal bonds are in pretty high demand if you're really good credit, like our county. And so pretty good appetite out there in the market right now. So, David Lloyd, Mayor Holt, Chairman Langford, Commissioner Taylor, that's Chairman of the Budget Commission, kind of been talking about this for a month or so or better. Bond counsel told us that if we don't refinance that debt by, I think it's September 1st, then you can't do it. Because all bonds are sold with a callable time frame that you can call them, and if you don't, in that period of time, however many years that is, then you can't refinance them anymore. That's it. You're gonna pay that bondholder until the end of that payment period, okay, whether it's 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So there's a good bit of savings, we believe, built into refinancing those bonds. The question came up once we kind of figured all of that out. The question came up about, well, with interest the way it is, we know we have some projects we need to do. they asked me, hey, what's the next thing on the agenda? Obviously, the middle school, we all know about. That's been talked about since we did the first campus design for Liberty Creek. So there's not really a lot of unknown there. We've always kind of planned that was going to be obviously the next thing that we wanted to try to address. I'm going to pass around these. You can keep these. JJ, you want to go and pass? You want to pass these out? Get one around there. So you've seen this. You haven't had it on this nice cardstock, but you've seen this. And so what we just flew over, this is the actual campus master plan that we had. So you kind of see where we flew over the high school, where that parking, Mr. Duncan, we were talking about the parking where the shot rock's at, and that pipe, straight over where the football field is. You can see the contours there. And then straight on over the hill, and then elementary school. You can see it. Where those two fields are, you see these two fields kind of closest to the road at the bottom, in front of the middle school. That's where those ruts were at. Y'all see this? See these two fields? That's where those ruts were at that I said, hey, this is where we're going to just grade off and leave, and we can use it. One thing that I like about this space, you guys can't see this on here, but this space where those two fields are, and those ruts were at, this is Mr. Brown's house. It's kind of whited out. You see it? In those trees right there? Okay. Just to the right of that's where the park pavilion will be. Okay? So what's going to happen, this tree line, there's some breaks in this tree line. We're going to clean it up. Eventually, I suspect that people that are using this pavilion, if you have a need for flat, grassy space on good days, you'll use that space. Does that make sense? Right there. So that's kind of why we went ahead and made sure that it would be graded and mowed and all that kind of stuff. But this is really stuff you've seen, but probably not to that size or scale. So keep that. That way you kind of have a visual idea of what's going on. Look, this you guys have seen a bunch. We talk about this, we update this, and talk about it a bit when we talk about buildings. The one thing that I have not probably talked to you guys about, because I thought we may not talk about it until we got ready to finance or build a middle school, which, without the refinancing issue would have probably been about a year from now. But being able to take advantage of the interest rates and construction costs are probably less today than they will be a year from now. I wanted to talk about White House. In White House, we have a number of housing developments. If you're not up that way, and even if you are up that way on the main road, you may not know what's about to happen unless you just know what the permits are. You kind of keep up with that stuff. I know Mr. Wise, of course, knows it, sees it, hears it all the time, and some of you may. But White House is certainly developers and folks have found it, and they're headed that way. Yeah. In a pretty strong fashion here the last little bit. So when you look at this sheet, and I'm going to give you a bunch of information about what I just mentioned about White House, but if you look at this sheet, all those things in red, if you just look over, we're making allocations for pretty much all those things. Because when you look and you say, okay, well, when Liberty Creek opens, we're doing things to download buildings that are in the red. Does that make sense? Howard, Rucker, wherever. We're downloading those, so we're in pretty good shape. When you get down to White House and you look at it, H.B. Williams, you guys, I'll remind you, it's on that sheet, but H.B. Williams is the only elementary school in the county, K-4. And then White House Middle is 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 5th grade in the middle school. And so when I give out this next piece of information and you look at this map, we're going to have some pretty good housing development density right on top of us. that's already approved and they're working on. Some of them are already about half built out. The big ones are just now starting. So, I know that we're gonna be in a situation where we're gonna need space at the middle school for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade only. HB can't handle it for two reasons. One, we already have 680 students at HB, right? If we added 5th grade back there, there's nowhere for them to go. Traffic, when you turn on the South Palmer's, is tough. If you hadn't been up to HB in the mornings, it's tough. Now, they're supposed to do some road improvements there and probably a light at the main Red River, but it's still tough. So I don't know that us continuing to add, more and more and more there is necessarily the thing to do. So my point to that is, I'm gonna hand this other information out. My point to that is, I think if we can and the county will approve it, while we're doing the middle school, I would like to see us utilize land we already own at White House Middle School campus and build a 3, 4, 5 building. So White House's student run would be K2 at H.B. Williams. Then they would go 3, 4, 5 at White House Intermediate, and then across the parking lot to 6, 7, 8, and then they'd all go to high school. So you have one single feeder pattern. You get the 5th grade back with elementary students. You free up space at all three, the new school, middle school, and HB, to handle whatever comes this way, with the developments. And I think you'll be in real good shape. It's an easier build because what portion of that property we're going to use is pretty flat. It's got that old house on it. If you've been up to White House Middle and you look to the right when you pull in, there's an old house that sits there. It's on that particular site, but we already own that. And the school board's own that. Since you built White House Middle, I would assume it's probably all tracked at that time.
Yeah, about that time, maybe a couple of years before.
So I'm gonna hand out a couple of things here. Will you pass these around?
Yes, we'll just give them out.
Okay, thank you. I got some stuff here I can't remember what you're not gonna have. What's going around, these graphics always help me. And do you guys remember back several years ago, I guess probably 5 now, when, probably 5, see if we run out of it. Probably 5 or so years ago when we kind of had to be the people in the county. Now it's a much better process to actually keep up with housing developments across the county and the municipalities. Some municipalities, all municipalities, of course, do through permits kept up with them. But somebody kind of collecting all that information, really, no one really kept up with it all together. So we started doing that. So if you look at this always helps me when you're looking kind of geographically at an area. So if you look, that's White House High School and the annex and the baseball field. You see them all lined up there? And then if you look further south, pretty much due south, you see CHB. So you can see how close Goodall's farmstead is between the two. You can see Springbrook is just outside the property boundary of HB. You see the dirt already at the reserve. And then you got Willow Grove. You already see the dirt where they built out in between there. And then over at Cambria and Summerlin, they're already building. So if you look at this, you can kind of see they're kind of, it's not unlike any other location that we have, right? I mean, if it's in a growth area where the schools are at, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? That's probably where the housing rooftops are going to go. The closest that they can get to that with access and get around pretty easy. So for us, you can kind of see the reason that we're talking about why we would need to do this, and now may be the time. I think there's about, down at the bottom, we put down approved, active, and inactive, but it's about 1,121 lots that are still out there that not already a house being built on. Amy, will you pass these
Yes, sir.
around? Now, this is going around, because I'm not sure all of you know really the site. This kind of helps you with White House.
Your classroom day. What's your name on the paper?
The building, he didn't say.
It's gonna be a test.
I'll be sad when the middle makes it.
So, all the same, yeah.
Do we have to know this?
You can use your book to fill out. Just get that, get the fifth graders out of middle school.
Get all the fines and approved to building in middle school.
This kind of gives you a layout of the current land that we own. Of course, this block of ground that's shaded in here, it gets pretty steep in here. You see those contour lines? So you can tell what's up and down. The closer the line, the steeper it is. So you can kind of see, and this is just first glance. Don't worry so much about exact position of the building or necessarily the parking lot area. What we do know is that we're going to have another entrance off 31 because we don't want to put everybody in one entrance and one exit. We do know that we're going to have some connection between parents that drop off here, but also want to get to the middle school, right? So you're going to have some connectivity between the two, but we'll work all that out. What I'm trying to show you here is that the easy to build on flat portion of the ground here is really what we're trying to take advantage of. Does that make sense? That's really the whole purpose of this, is just to show you that we've got room there, plenty of room there to do what we want to do. This particular building, talk about square footages. This particular building probably will wind up about 60,000 square feet. That's what I'm thinking. Let me give you some reference point. This building will have about capacity of about 600 students, 575. H.B. Williams typically averages about 135 per grade. So think about that. Even if we say, okay, at some point in the future, you're going to have 175 to 200 per grade, you're still going to have plenty of room in the plan. Does that make sense? So,
You're saying plenty of room at the 5 through whatever. What I'm worried about is what's gonna happen to the middle school.
well, you're
Seems like to me we're gonna need more middle school later.
not because you're taking out one grade that's already there.
Yeah, but that's only 135 kids. When you fill these, it's hard to what age the kids are in these houses.
Well, yeah, but I mean, statistically, if you get enough houses, they're going to be they're going to be equally dispersed. It's just like saying, well, I've got 10,000 people. I don't know how many boys and girls I have. I do. You got 5,000 of both of them. Law of averages, law of large numbers, that's what you're going to have. So, when you look at spread out in 0 to 12, K to 12, if you take enough households, it's going to be evenly dispersed. I mean, you might have one age band that has 2 kids more. Does that make sense? Y'all see what I'm saying? You spread it out enough with enough people, and it's not about what's in between, it's just about the total number. So White House Middle School, when you take the 5th grade back out, you'll have plenty of room there because the growth in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students will be consumed evenly between 3 grades of the 150 you take out. You see what I'm saying? Take out that 150, it's going to fill back up with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders split evenly between the grades. So you'll be fine.
And they only stay there 3 years versus in elementary school, they're there for 6 years.
I just remember one year the problems we had in Gallatin. See, your problem is I'm too old. When we had this grade go through, there was like 3 classes bigger than any other grade.
Yeah.
And it was the devil trying to, because at the time we were piecemealing schools. We didn't have the sections we have now. So I guess that takes care of it, having them split up more.
Yeah, probably so. If you're just condensed down, like, give you an example to kind of make your point and my point too. It's a whole lot easier for us to manage up and down between grades at Station Camp Elementary with 1,000 students than it is if we have 8 students more in one grade at Oakmont. Because that's a big skew.
Right.
You know, there's 20 in second grade, and 20 in third grade, and 20 in fourth grade, and 28 in fifth grade, right? Where those 8 spread over 9 classrooms at Station Camp wouldn't be one student. So the smaller you're working with, the more violent the number change can make it. It's just the way that math works. So I don't expect that will be the case here, and it certainly won't have any impact on what we would do with the building. You know, I don't think we'll have an issue with that. I think once you take the 5th grade out, you'll fill them back up evenly with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You'll reduce that many out of the HB, and you'll fill them back up evenly split between K1 and 2. So gives you plenty of room to grow. About 60,000 square feet probably there. To give you some perspective, Burris, and New Liberty Creek Elementary, about 95,000, okay? But they're out there with capacity 850 to 900. Here, you're gonna be 550 to 600. So you see, you'll just, the sizes of spaces within the building, you can't reduce to just half. In other words, I have half the students, well, I'm only gonna have half the square footage. No, because you still have to have the same width hallways. You gotta have cafeteria, you gotta have, you see what I'm saying? You gotta have a gym. So some of those larger spaces and spaces that are redundant in any building, you don't save that square footage just because you reduce the capacity of the building. Does that make sense? Okay, so, you know, I think the building will wind up about 60,000 square feet. The middle school at Liberty Creek is pretty easy because in the package that we have with the contractor out there now, Biskin, we went ahead, if you remember, we went ahead and did all the utilities and everything from the curve of that road up there is done. So that's already finished. Does that make sense? So you've got utilities. The contractor that does Liberty Creek Middle is just going to go from the curve of the road and take care of the building and the parking lot. And that's all that bid would encompass because we've already done all the other work in the bid that's out there now for the campus. So that building, all of our new middle schools, Knox Dawes, Portland West, all the newer ones that are built in that same range of size to handle around 850 or so students capacity are all about 125,000 feet, 127,880 if you want to look on that sheet because they're on that big long page there. But they're all the same, and I suspect that one will be exactly identical to it. The facade will change because kind of like we did between Burris and Liberty Creek, the Liberty Creek Middle School facade will look more like the other 2 schools that we already are building there. Okay? White House Middle is easy. Brick, we're going to make it match the middle schools. Brick, blue roof, blue windows, just like we have there already. So about 60,000 feet for the 345 building, intermediate building at White House, and then about 127 or so, which matches the other middle schools that we've built and at the middle school. If it goes to the county, Monday, I'm going to do this at Budget and Education combined Monday evening and ask them to approve it. If they approve it, then it would go to the full county commission in March. And then if they approved it, I suspect that we would work to try to get plans done and then bids back to you guys for both buildings probably sometime in the fall. Targeting on both these buildings because there's not a ton of site work that goes into it. Probably targeting somewhere around Christmas of 23, something like that. In your mind at Liberty Creek, that would mean that the middle school students would only be in that annex, you know, where the freshmen are going to be. They would only be in there 6 months, 1 semester, maybe 1 year total. And then they would go across the parking lot to their own school building, okay? but that's kind of the tentative timeline for it today. I'm happy to answer questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, this is the discussion part.
Do we need a motion, Mr. Chairman, before we go into discussion mode?
No, we've already got
All right,
We already did a motion.
Yes.
Got a motion in a second?
I did, oh, no, that was on the agenda.
No, we don't do one on agenda.
I'll come back tomorrow.
Mr. Duncan?
Director Phillips, I know we're gonna be questioned about this, is why I'm asking the question. And it looks like there's gonna be a volume or capacity issue. Why don't we just expand HB Williams to add those grades? I think I understand the square footage, capacity, and the reasoning why, in addition to the logistics of a 2-lane road. But I know that we're all gonna be asked about why we don't just expand that elementary school.
Yeah. Well, number one, I don't know necessarily on that site that you have the room or the ability to expand it. Two, I think with what I'm seeing with current traffic plus subdivision traffic that's about to be there, even with road improvements on the state road and in front of HB, I'm not so sure that that would be the best long-term solution. The third thing is, you would have to add enough, that you would have a pretty big building run there. You'd have lots of kiddos in there by the time you built to capacity. Because if you think about, hey, we're gonna have potentially 800 at HB in the future, and then we're gonna have 550, you would be within 15, 18 years from now, Mr. Duncan, you'd have an elementary school up there with 1,250, 1,300 kiddos.
Like I said, I kind of figured that through the conversation, but I just want to, sometimes we get questions that
Yeah.
are obvious, that the public just does not have the information and have sit down and studied it. So it makes sense. Thank you.
What we're trying to do here is you want to build capacity, like I said, in any grade up there, you're already at 135 on average. You just want to run that thing on up to where you can handle 175 or so per grade, because I think if that's the case, you'll be fine for a good long while.
Any other questions?
And of course, you guys, hey, we've got a long little ride here. We've got go to the county, and then it goes to the county on over the third, fourth week now, I guess, of March because of spring break. It's off a week, so. If you have questions or something comes up and you need clarification or more numbers or something doesn't make sense, you guys know, just call me. We study and stare at these things enough to probably be able to answer the question. And if you ask us when we don't know, we will find out. I promise you that.
Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, so a couple of questions. One, talking again about timeline. So if we approve this tonight, it goes to the county on Monday, then it goes to their full. What is then the process though, as far as them getting the bond?
So the
Like,
bond,
what's that timeframe?
yeah, the bond process is a little trickier. It takes longer legally. So a little bit of that is similar to you listening to your mortgage banker to tell you when to lock in a rate.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get all your stuff together and done and approved. It has to be through underwriting. The bonds have to be rated. If you hadn't been rated within a certain period of time, which I think we probably have been, that might cut down the time. But then once all that happens, you have a set amount of time before you have to sell them. In other words, it's kind of like, okay, I want to lock up my house. Well, I've only got 90 days to close, whatever. You just have to kind of look at what similar type bonds are sold in Tennessee, rated like we are as a county for school bonds, and they will tell you based on last week's sales what the rates are, and what the appetite is among investors to buy those, and then you just kind of time it. But I suspect that all probably, if everything worked perfectly, I would think that would probably be sometime in June, July.
Okay.
Which means that we would probably be, if it gets approved by the county, we would go ahead and start with the work we needed to do with the architect, that kind of stuff. But The buildings we're building here, minus a little bit of maneuvering with facade and the difference in the building at White House compared to what we typically build, like with Burris and Liberty Creek Elementary. I'll have to do a little bit there to make sure it's the size and spaces we need. But it won't be a big turnaround from an architecture standpoint because we already own those plans. So we'll just work with Gary and we'll have a contract like we always do with you guys, through the board. And then we'll get the plan set and then get it out on the street and hopefully maybe have bids back to you guys to approve and go to the county to approve sometime in the fall, September, something like that.
Okay, and then also, looking at the plan, my assumption is the way in which we are gonna make that middle school in White House a little bit smaller than say, not middle school, the elementary school in White House, a little bit smaller than Burris, so forth, is what I can only call the fingers part of it. Probably just shortening that, so those hallways.
Yep.
But then that would also, possibly, if for some reason there is explosive growth within the White House community, then I assume we're gonna also plan that property so that if we needed to then add on to those fingers, we would make sure that we are planning accordingly for that.
Yep, you're exactly right. I
Okay.
appreciate you saying that. What Ms. Andrews is saying is 100% correct. What you're gonna do is, when we shrink that footprint to be 60,000, where you're gonna shrink the majority will be the length of the wings, where the grades are, right? So we're just gonna shrink those things up to fit the classrooms we need to the capacity. But if somewhere down the road, a board 25 years from now said, hey, we gotta have 2 standalone K-5s in White House, right? Okay, HB's already built like that. This school will be built like that. All they'd have to do is go out there and build onto the wings. So you wanna plan it on the front end, and we will plan it on the front end, to have room at the end of the wings we build to go on out. We've done the same thing at Jack Anderson. Now, we built Burris full. Can't go anymore. We did that on purpose, but because we needed it. But if you look at the other schools, like we added at Vena. You guys remember? We just did it last year. We added at Vena on the end of those wings. So we'll have that in mind. So down the road, if another board needs to do that, it'll be easy to do. They'll bid it and go out there and build them on, and the hallway will just keep going.
And the last thing I would just like to say is talking about the timeline on opening these buildings. I know a lot of times when we think through those things and we kind of get the ball rolling and so forth, we're kind of like, let's get them open as soon as we can. I just would like to say, I don't know that I love the thought of doing that at like a Christmas break. Just because, number one, this is the families that, specifically Liberty Creek area, that have already kind of gone through that, and then they're gonna get there, they're gonna barely get settled to then get uprooted again in the middle of a year. And I just think too, probably for principals and so forth, for planning to have to do that, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know we get a building and you wanna use it and so forth, but maybe take that into consideration as far as when we go through the planning process. Again, having the kids that had to start at Dawes and then go in to Burris to change that, and you're talking about teachers' Christmas breaks and so forth and having to move classrooms. So
Also remember too, if we get this approved and we get a contract and we get a bidder and we get a firm timeline, because I'm saying Christmas, but it may be May because we might get the bond sold in time. You know what I mean? There's 15 million moving parts. But let's say you can't, and you're going to be 1 year, and you don't want to make that transition to the new school. You always have the option at that point down the pipe to not rezone the middle school, just hold them where they're at for 1 year and then just send them to the new school.
right.
Y'all see what I'm saying? Just pull back a year and sit there with 6th, 7th, and 8th. Let them stay in their current zone school. Because the next year, they're gonna have a brand new building.
Right. I just would say on the front end, just let's be mindful of that, just not only for the students, but also for the teachers.
And even if it's that first year, and it's just 1 year, I think that's something that at the board level, when we set that and we know when we look in December and January of this coming year, and we're saying, hey, this is the final zoning, this is what, everything's on schedule, this is what we're doing for Liberty Creek. We'll already know this building, the middle school building will already be bid and they'll be up there working on it. So we need to make that decision about what do we think's best. Moving them for 1 year to what we thought would be the middle school for a few years and turn into that, or just let freshmen fill that on the front end like it's gonna be used forever.
Yeah.
Hold the middle schoolers in their current zone school, and then just the next year, they'll go to the new school at Liberty Creek and won't miss a beat. I think it's just something we'll have to decide what's best for students and families, parents.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. First, I want to make a comment, and then I have a quick question. I just want to thank you all, Chris, Scott, Dale, Amanda, numbers people, and you are always watching to be financially smart like this. The efficiency, the effectiveness of our dollars, watching what the bond rates are and moving when we can take advantage of that. And in the long run, that saves us a lot of money. But that forethought and the planning is just strategic. And so I just appreciate it, doing it well. Quick question on this, and you'll have to go back and, if I missed, the ones in red, and you said that this is where we were gonna be downloading. What is Hendersonville High School? Where are you?
Well, that's on core, not classroom.
But it's in the red, so what is
Over
the,
here. I'm worried about these.
gotcha,
This is classroom. Core, you can never go back and change core because core means gyms
There.
and
Gotcha,
cafeterias.
gotcha,
This is a cafeteria issue.
gotcha. That was what I wanted to
Yeah.
know about,
You want to run down that core, you want to run down that classroom list,
yeah,
okay? So what happens is over time, if you build a building and you don't build a core big enough to consume the movement of the capacity, then you start seeing red numbers in core. That's all the auxiliary spaces, right? And it really starts to impact you more in high schools than anything else, to be honest with you.
well, in this number with fire codes or anything, it's in red because,
Just because the way we calculate core space versus capacity, it's that way.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with anybody other than me and the architect
gotcha.
and people that stare at this stuff all the
Thank you,
time.
just understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Anyone else?
Chairman Brewer, my light won't come on.
Oh, it's probably I got mine on. That's probably. We might have sabotaged your microphone.
I believe you cut it off.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Fix it.
No, here.
Oh, I
Oh, we got
it.
Use Mr. Wilkerson's there, I guess. I don't know.
Can you get mine?
Yeah, it's actually disconnected down
Oh,
the
it's,
bottom.
well, they disconnected mine.
Good job, Chris.
That's the way to do it.
All right.
Now,
All
Mr.
right.
Gregory.
But it won't take me long. One of our school board members several years ago made a comment. Danny Hales, who it was, he said, when you make a decision and it turns out well, it's a good business decision. If it does not turn out well, it's politics. I believe this is a good business decision. I really do. And one other thing, Dr. Phillips. What is the Middle Technical College High at Portland?
The, old vocational building.
Is that TCAP?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was not built in 61.
When was it built?
I think 66.
Well, let me get that corrected. 61 and 66.
Yeah, 61 was when the present
Old high school built.
Portland East.
Portland East 61. That's probably what they thought. They probably thought it was built and they pulled that.
That was 1961.
66, is that right?
Well,
There's a plaque up there with it on it, isn't
56,
it? 66?
no, not 56, 66.
All right. I'll give you change for it.
Well, it's not gonna bother me, but
Well, I want it to be right.
66, I remember when they did that.
All right. I'll give you change. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to know, I just
Miss
out of
Miss Brown,
curiosity.
Miss Brown?
How many-
Mr. Gregory still got his light on.
Okay,
And
got
then
it on,
and then I've
okay.
got Miss Andrews, and I'll come back to you.
I'm sorry.
Miss Andrews.
Also, just double checking, when we're looking at the numbers with the schools, because quite frankly, not only do my days run together lately, also my years run together. These numbers, 2019, does that include already, did we do that in 19 when we moved the kids from, station camp to like Little Beach and Hunter?
Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna tell you real quick. Yes.
So that number at Little Beach, that's 592, that includes the rezoned
That's
children
right.
and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cause it was about, I was about 440 before that. We moved about 100, actually wound up at about, when he settled out that year, past the first month, I think we were about 605.
okay. I just want to make sure I'm looking at these numbers in the correct
About
context.
605, 610, something.
Thank you, Miss Andrews. Now, Miss Brown?
I just was curious about how many students we have this year.
Total, we've got about 29,500, a little over 29,500.
Well, I was up to date. I didn't think I was.
Yeah. Last year, we were right at 30,000 at this time. So when you look at the difference between the two, most of it probably was homeschool that are coming back. The difference in that number was pretty elevated at the first of the year, but every day more and more come back.
Well, I'll give you some food for thought.
Okay?
Remember I was talking about that year we had those 3 extra grades? Well,
Yeah.
it was due to the year we were out for a month with snow.
Yeah.
So with COVID and with our ice for a week, I figure 26 and 27 ought to be years you can look
Yeah.
forward to.
Yeah, no. Probably have better, a lot of kindergarten space that year, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you're probably right, I think. Out of that.
Thank you, Miss Brown. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And we're adjourned.
Thank you, y'all.